Okay, so hello everyone and have a pleasant day to all. This is Teaching and Assessment of Macro Skills under CN 5728. And last time we talked about the concept and the importance of listening. So I believe that the previous reporters already presented the topic and already elaborated the topic. So this time we will now going to proceed to the next topic, which is the strategies in teaching listening. So we will be discussing this topic along with my group mates. So shall we start? So teaching listening. So teaching listening skills provide an avenue for students to be exposed to rich input and an authentic sample of oral text. So this allows students to be familiar with what constitutes oral text, like the pronunciation, the stress, the pitch, and even the intonation, and to be exposed to rich vocabulary and language structure that is used in varied communicative settings. So our students may use the top-down and bottom-up processes in both in listening. So as one listens, he or she may consciously or unconsciously use one or both processes. So according to Kayono and Wijati 2009, they states that successful listeners are those who can use both bottom-up and top-down processes by combining the new information and the knowledge that they already know. So, according to Brown 2006 and Yildirim 2016, they elaborate this saying. So, they states that students must hear some sounds, hold them in their working memory long enough to connect them, and then interpret what they have just heard before something comes along. So at the same time, listeners are using their background knowledge to determine meaning with respect to prior knowledge and schemata. So this claim is supported by several authors, and thus lead to Lopez et al. 2020 mentions as an integrative approach in teaching listening, which involves the three key stages. So these three key stages involves before listening, while listening, and after listening. So as future language teachers or as a future educator, you must ensure to provide activities. You must ensure that you will provide your students an activities that would involve in processing and decoding the text and then comprehending it with one's schema. So this would be incorporates into top-bottom and bottom-up processes. So the greater use of one process over the other will depend on listening purpose, the listening characteristics, and the context where the listening acts takes place. So this is according to Vandergrift 2011. So according to Richards 2008, in Lopez et al. 2020, they stated that in real-world listening, both the bottom-up processes and top-down processes generally occur together. So the extent to which one or the other dominates depends on the listener's familiarity with the topic and the context of the text, the density of the information in the text, and the type of text, the listener's purpose in the text.
Exercises you can use which would develop students' top-down and bottom-up processing.
Alright, so these are the three key stages in teaching listening according to Richards 2008. So we have three. We have before listening stage, while listening stage or during listening stage, and post-listening phase or stage. So in before listening stage, this allows students to prepare for both types of processing through activities that requires activating their prior knowledge, making predictions, and revising key vocabularies. So this involves activities for a pre-listening activities. So during the listening stage or while listening stage, the focus is the attention and comprehension through activities that require selective listening, listening for main ideas, or understanding the sequence of events or sequencing. So these are the activities involved in a while listening stage. And in the post listening stage, or in post listening phase, students should express their opinions on the topic and respond to their comprehension. Now this stage may also include a detailed analysis of some sections of the text that could not be understood by the students. So that's the three rather stages of teaching listening. So moreover, since most of actual listening students are exposed to real life conversations, we or you as a future language teachers must encourage to contextualize the materials and anchor activities on real life situations.
So we have three key stages in teaching listening. We have before listening, while listening, and after listening. So here are the suggested activities in before listening. You can start by introducing key vocabulary words from the text that students might find challenging or unfamiliar. You can write these words on the board, provide definitions, and maybe even use them in sentences to give context. Second, encourage students to write down questions they have about the topic or content of the text before listening, because this will help them focus on what they want to learn or understand it better. Third is provide students with a jumbled version of the text. This could be a paragraph or a series of sentences that are out of order. Ask students to work individually or in pairs to rearrange the text into the correct order. In this activity, it will help them activate their schemata and gets them thinking about the content before they listen to it. Fourth is based on the title of the text. Ask students to predict what they think the text will be about. In this, it will encourage them to make connections to their prior knowledge and experiences. And lastly, before listening to the oral text, ask students questions related to the topic in order to activate their prior knowledge. This could include asking about their own experiences, what they already know about the topic, or any related content they've learned before.
So, good morning, everyone. So, here are the suggested activities during the stage of during or while listening. So, the first one is to instruct students to list down important words. So, it is important to let your students jot down notes about your discussion or certain words about your discussion. The next one is to let the students guess the meaning of unknown words from the oral text. So it is some sort of testing the understanding of your students if they really listened or they really understood what you are discussing. The third one is as the teacher reads the text or as the audio recording plays, the teacher may stop at some parts to ask students to write down important points or give descriptions, etc. So, in this case, it is really important to um, pause while discussing so that your students can um, cope up to your discussion and they can easily understood what you are discussing. And also, you will ask the students to list expressions that occurred while listening and ask them to do close exercises while listening. So in this case, it is some sort of observation if you will ask the students to list the expressions that occurred while listening, because it is also important to identify the different expressions while the discussion is happening. And lastly, let them show evidence or of understanding or non-understanding through gestures, thumbs up or thumbs down while listening. So we are all familiar with this, right? Because whenever our teacher or when whenever we are conducting our classes, our instructors are asking us if we really understood or not our discussion. So it is also the same in this case, because while you are discussing, you should also ask the students if they really understood your discussion, and it will show in their gestures like thumbs up or thumbs down if they really understood your lesson.
Good day everyone, I am Nicole Gracie Antonia and I will be continuing the exercises using the principle of interactive approach using listening. So I will be discussing the suggested activities for the stage of post or after listening. So first activity is ask the students to think and talk about what they heard. For example, if a teacher made the students listen to an audio of a literary text, she or he can ask the students after what they think about the story, did they like the story, something like that. Because if the students are able to respond to those questions, it means that the students listened to the audio which was played. Another activity is let them create and share their dialogues from what they have listened to. So, an example of this is a teacher can make the students conduct a role play based on the dialogues that they create based on what they have listened to. For example, the teacher made the students listen to Romeo and Juliet, and then based on that audio, they will create a dialogue and then perform that after. Another activity is let them write their own opinions and share them with the class. Another example of this is, for instance, there is a character and that character has a questionable morality. For example, he or she is morally great. So the teacher can ask the students if what their opinion is about that character, whether they think the character is right in their actions, and then share them with the class. Another activity in the post or after listening is ask them to sequence important events from the stories listened to. So, I guess we are all familiar with the activity sequencing events. In elementary, we were given this activity by our teachers. There are maybe a list of sentences and then there are blanks on the side, and then the students will answer by writing the number before the sentence, and those numbers are the actual order of the sequence of events. So that can also be applied in listening, in the post-listening stage. For example, after listening to an audio of a text, then the students will be given an activity by the teacher to sequence the events based on what they have heard. So another activity again is let them complete gaps in the text, pick words and phrases that are heard or matched, and choose pictures. So an example of completing gaps in the text is, I guess you're familiar with the activity wherein in some textbooks wherein there is a paragraph and there are blanks, and those blanks are to be filled by the students after they listened to the audio that they heard. So if they can fill those blanks correctly with the correct words or correct information based on what they listened to, then it means that they truly listened to what they have listened. Another activity is ask question for comprehension. In storytelling, it is common that the teacher will ask questions right after telling a story to the students orally. This will help facilitate their listening and to test whether they truly listened, because if they can respond to those questions correctly, it means that the students have listened. For example, the teacher told the story of Pygmalion and Galatea in Greek mythology. For example, the teacher told the story orally to the students, and then after that, the teacher will ask, who was the goddess who helped Pygmalion, something like that. And then if the students answer that correctly, then it means they comprehended what they listened to, and they really listened to the teacher. Another activity is introduce memory games. So, are you familiar with Singing Bee? Singing Bee is it was a game in a game show in television, and that game is played by singing, and then right after that the lyrics will be flashed on the screen, and then there are blanks, so the singer uh, will fill those blanks. So that the same can be applied in listening, in post listening stage in learning. The teacher can write paragraphs or provide paragraphs with blanks, because that is a memory game that will test the students' memory of what they have listened to, and then if they can supply answers correctly, then they really listen. Another activity, let the students complete tables, charts, diagrams, and sentences. So again, this activity is really repetitive, but the students can again fill in the blanks. For example, the activity is there is a paragraph and there are blanks, and those blanks can only be filled if they listened to what the teacher made them listen, because that those questions or those paragraph is related or is the actual text they listened to. So if they really listened and understood the audio that they listened to, then they can fill those correctly. And another one, let the students answer multiple choice questions or true or false questions. I bet you have already seen a question in an exam, probably, wherein there is a passage, and then after reading the passage, there will be choices, or there will be questions rather, and then choices about that passage. So the same can be done in post or after listening. So after listening to a certain audio, for example, an audio of a literary text, then the teacher rather can make the students answer questions about what they listen to. It could be multiple choice or true or false, and then again, if they can answer those questions correctly, then it will really test and prove that they listened to it. And last activity in post listening is let the students do character portrayal. So if the students can successfully portray a character, it means that they really listened to what they have listened to. For example, if the teacher made the students listen to an audio of, let's say, Greek mythology, for example, the story of Psyche and Cupid. So if the students can portray the character of, let's say, Psyche, then the students truly listen to what they have listened to and understood it enough that they can portray a character accurately. So aside from that, the teacher can also build and expand the students' understanding through integrating other language skills. So aside from listening, the teacher can also expand the students' knowledge by integrating the other skills like reading, writing, and speaking.
Let us now proceed in the format of a listening lesson. In the previous discussion, we have established the following points. First, teachers have to provide activities that supplement comprehension goals with acquisition goals. So this means that while students are working on understanding the listening material, they should also be acquiring new vocabulary, grammar structures, and language skills. For example, activities such as word webs, gap fill exercises, and discussion questions not only help students understand the listening text, but it also introduces them to new vocabulary and grammar. So, successful listeners are those who can use both bottom-up and top-down processes. Therefore, teaching learning activities should provide students with the opportunity to practice both. For example, activities such as word webs and gap fill exercises focus on bottom-up processing, while activities like brain walking and discussion questions focus on top-down processing. And lastly, the three key stages in listening may be used as an outline in designing a listening lesson that ensures an interactive process approach in teaching listening. Pre-listening. This stage sets the context of the listening activity that will be given to students. So in this stage, the following will help you in getting your students ready for the listening task. First, identifying vocabulary or comprehension needs. So before starting a listening activity, it is essential to identify the vocabulary and comprehension needs of our students. So as language teachers, we should have a good understanding of our students' listening skills and vocabulary level. This information helps us choose appropriate listening materials and design effective pre-listening activities. So by selecting vocabulary from the listening text and provide activities such as word definition matching or fill in the gap exercises, we can help students become familiar with the necessary terms. This preparation ensures that students are better equipped to understand the listening text when they encounter it. Second is activating interest. Activating interest is crucial for setting the right mood in the classroom and motivating students to engage with the listening activity. To do this, we can start the lesson with engaging activities that capture students' interest and make them curious about the topic of the listening text. Using resources such as video, audio segments, songs, or stories related to the listening topic can help generate excitement and prepare students for the upcoming activity. When students are motivated and interested, they are more likely to actively participate and engage with the listening material. Third is putting it in context. To help students better understand the listening text, it is essential to put it in context. This involves choosing listening texts that are relevant and interesting to the students. So during the pre-listening stage, we can design activities that activate students' prior knowledge and help them make predictions about the content of the listening text. So by discussing the topic, asking questions, and providing background information, we can help students connect the listening text to their own experiences and knowledge. So this contextualization helps students from appropriate inferences and better comprehend the message of the listening text. And lastly, setting the purpose. Setting the purpose of the text of the listening activity. And lastly, setting the purpose. Setting the purpose of the listening activity is crucial for helping students focus their attention and understand why they are listening. So before starting the listening task, we should clearly explain the purpose of the activity to the students. Are they listening for information, to understand the main idea, or for specific details? By clarifying the purpose of the listening activity, we help students know what to listen for and what listening strategies to use. This not only improves their listening comprehension, but it also helps them develop important listening skills that they.
While listening activities, you may need to consider the following. The first one is listening and re-listening. So, most of the students had difficulty on understanding audio audio text, so that's why they need to listen to it several times before they can understand. So in this case, you may want to inform the students ahead that such audio recordings will be played more than once so as not to put too much pressure on them. Likewise, depending on the purpose of the listening task and the listening material, as a teacher, of course, you need to remember that you need to assess how much your students can take and whether listening once is enough for them. So as their teacher, you need to be aware of the capability and the limits of your students. So if the students are listening independently, they can stop the audio and think or listen again as needed. So if there are cases, you will let the students to listen to the audio text independently so that they can control where to stop and where to continue. The next one is the guided listening and scaffold note taking. So while listening focuses on comprehension through exercises that require selective listening, guest listening, sequencing, and etc. So in this case, you need your students to complete something while listening. So you have to make sure that they have previewed and understood the written task first before listening begins. So before you will conduct the listening activity, you need to make sure that you already have previewed activities and they already understood the instruction about the listening activity. So remember that these tasks are given to guide your students in the listening task and not to distract them. So you will also have to keep writing tasks to a minimum because the activity is listening activity, so that they will not really focus on writing but in listening. So especially if your goal is comprehension, you need to minimize writing. So you can provide listening organizers to help students focus on important details, which can help them deepen their understanding of the listening material or task. You can also direct them to find clues, context clues from the listening text, which would help them understand better. So these kind of activities can be done by pairs or in groups, although we all know that listening activity can be done individually, but sometimes students became more confident if they're working with a partner, especially in completing while listening activities. And the last one is thinking space. So just like any other activities or classroom activities, we need to have a break. We need to have a pause on the activities because we can't really do simultaneous activities because the students will get bored and they will lose interest on the activity. So you need to give them time to process the information by pausing in between paragraphs and check now and then if they are still following. For example, when you are discussing or you are narrating a story, you need to pause on some certain parts to elaborate the story and to make sure that the students are coping up to your discussion. Because if you will just continuously reading the story until it ends, the students will get bored and the students will not be able to cope up to the story. So there are a lot of listening texts you can use in your classroom. So however, providing students with a more real act of communication through authentic listening text, it provides a better way for students to understand language when used in a real context. So here are some examples of listening text that can be your source for listening text. Number one is spoken poetry, radio programs, news, advertisements, or etc. Song lyrics, a lecture, recorded announcement in airports, bus terminals, etc. Video segments like TED Talks or TED Talks, etc. Tutorial videos, an anecdote, short stories, etc. Podcast and vodcast.
So I will be continuing the report of the formats of a listening lesson in the stage of post-listening. So foremost, it is important to note that the post-listening stage only serves as a follow-up to the listening activity that was done while or during listening to fulfill the purpose of the listening task. So without further ado, here are the format of the listening lesson. So first is responding to the text. So responding to the text means that the students will give their reaction to the content of what they have listened to. So the teacher can provide discussion questions or evaluative questions so the students can process what they feel about what they listen to. The students can also give their opinions, whether they have opposing or agreeing views with what they have listened to. For example, they have listened to a piece of literature, an audio of a literature, and then in that literature, there is a character who has questionable choices or is morally gray, and then as a follow-up question for the students to respond to the text, the teacher can ask if what the character did is right. Do they think that the character was right in their decision? Something like that. And after that, they can answer that question. The students can answer that question. And another indication that the students have listened to the text and can respond to the text is that the students can summarize or synthesize the information that they have listened to. It is a proof that they have understood what they listened to, because one can only summarize a text that is listened to or maybe even read. They can only summarize it if they have truly understood the content. So if they can summarize the text that they listened to, then it means that they really understood the text. Next is analyzing linguistic features of the text. So in listening, it's not only the content of the text that the students are going to focus into. It could also be the linguistic features of the text, like the grammatical rules in that text. And that varies depending on the goal of the listening task. So, for example, if the goal of the listening task is to analyze language forms, then this is applicable, analyzing linguistic features of the text. And because grammar is quite difficult to analyze if you only listen, then the teacher can provide a copy or a script of the text that they listen to, so they can analyze the linguistic features of that text. And the third one is integrating speaking and writing. So another indication that the students have listened and understood the text that they listened to is if they are able to produce something out of it, if they are able to use productive skills, specifically speaking and writing. So, listening is a receptive skill, and a teacher can test if the students listen to the text, if they can produce something out of it. So, for example, the students can write dialogues out of the text that they listen to, create compositions out of it. They can also role play a certain scene. For example, the teacher made the students listen to Romeo and Juliet. Then, if the students were able to role play a scene in that story, then they have listened properly and understood the story. The students can also express their appreciation and reaction through written or oral work. This is an example of this is reaction papers or reflection papers or even literary analysis.
So let us now proceed in strategies and examples in teaching listening. So an effective and successful listening skill requires practice, and you need lots of it. So as a language teacher, you need to provide varied and relevant listening opportunities for your students in and outside the classroom. So here are some examples that you can use. In pre-listening, we have 4 listening strategies, and first is identifying vocabulary or comprehension needs. Our first example under this is word webs. So before starting the listening activity, inform the students about the topic. Then using semantic webs, ask them to provide words, topics, or subtopics that they think might come up during the listening. This helps activate their prior knowledge and prepares them for the listening task by focusing their attention on relevant vocabulary and concepts. Next is mind maps. Another way to activate prior knowledge and helps students organize their thoughts is by using mind maps. So have students generate ideas and create associations from a given central idea, theme, or topic. This not only helps them brainstorm relevant vocabulary, but also encourages them to make connections between different concepts. Third is Ask Me. Give students words or expressions from the listening text and let them explain these to a partner. This not only checks their understanding of the vocabulary but also encourages peer-to-peer learning. So roam around the classroom to check for student understanding and encourage them to use the list during the listening stage to tick off the words they hear in the listening passage. Fourth is words on the board. So you can write different words on the board and ask students to choose 2 or 3 words. From these words, they will have to create one sentence. This will help them reinforce vocabulary learning and encourages students to use the words in context. And lastly, the gap fill. Write sentences with missing words. Ask students to choose one of the sentences and complete it with their own ideas. This not only tests their comprehension of the listening passage, but also encourages them to use the vocabulary in context. We will now proceed in our second listening strategy, which is activating the interest. So our first example is brain walking. To activate students' interest in the topic, you can put posters around the classroom related to the listening activity. You can ask students to move around, look at each poster, and talk about what comes to mind after looking at them. This not only engages them physically, but it also mentally prepares them for the topic of the listening activity. Second is guess the theme. Use eye-catching images, graphics, maps, or diagrams related to the listening text as clues to help students guess the theme of the listening text. This not only piques their interest, but it also helps them make connections between the visual cues and the listening material. Third example is solve the puzzle. To further engage students, give them pieces of a puzzle picture related to the listening passage. Students can then guess what could have happened using these pieces. This activity encourages critical thinking and prediction skills. Another example is sing along. You can provide certain lines, expressions, or words from the text and ask volunteers to sing a song containing these words or expressions. This not only makes the listening activity more fun, but it also helps reinforce vocabulary and language structures in a memorable way. And our last example is what I want to do. To further engage students and activate their interest, give them the listening topic and ask them what they would want to do after they are done listening to the text. This helps them set a purpose for listening and prepares them for the follow-up activities that may come after the listening task. So we are now in our third listening strategy in listening lesson, which is putting it in context. Our first example under this is POSIT. To help students relate to the listening task to their prior knowledge, have them brainstorm ideas about a topic related to the listening task. Then, in pairs or small groups, they can share what they know about the topic, relating it to their prior schema. Students then can write these ideas down on small papers and post them on the board, which is creating a visual representation of their collective knowledge. Second is make up a story. To help students make sense of the listening material, Provide them with some pictures related to the listening text and ask them to put these pictures in an order that makes sense in order to create a story. So this encourages creativity and critical thinking as well as helping students understand the sequence of events. Third is let's draw. To further engage students and activate their imagination, give them a topic related to the listening text and ask them to draw something related to it, providing as many details as they can. Then afterward, they can post their work for everyone to see, encouraging peer interaction and feedback. Another is using poll. For listening topics that may involve controversies or differing opinions, you can conduct a quick anonymous poll like Google Forms and reveal the results after they're done listening. This will help students understand the different perspectives presented in the listening text and prepares them for the discussion that may follow. And our last strategy in teaching listening lesson is setting the purpose. So under this, we have our first example, which is brainstorming. To help students focus their attention during the listening activity, discuss the topic with them and have them brainstorm headings to take notes under. This helps them understand the specific task they will do while listening and prepares them for the information they need to gather. Second is listening for pleasure. Before starting the listening activity, inform students of the title of the listening text and ask them to list down the interesting things that they think they can find out from the listening activity. This will help them focus their attention and engage with the material in a meaningful way. Our last example is what I want to do. To further engage students and activate their interest, give them the listening topic and ask them what they would want to do after they are done listening to the text. This helps them set a purpose for listening and prepares them for the follow-up activities that may come up after the listening task. Maler.
Listening strategies under the while listening stage is to provide an opportunity for students to re-listen. The first example is let me read it first. So we should let students read the listening transcript first for a very short time, then work on listening for specific information, this time without the script. So for example of this is when you will first give the students the story and you will let them read it for a very short time, and then you will, after reading, you will discuss it on class without, of course, you will without the script in the students. And the next one is take 2. Read the listening text first, then let students listen to the audio recording. This way, you are giving them varied sources of listening text, especially if the audio recording is from a native speaker, or if these are individual listening tasks, you may give your students a chance to replay the recordings, especially if they are listening for specific details. So, just like what I stated earlier, or in the past topics, it is for us to be able to really understood what we are reading. We need to really understood the text. We need to re-listen to it so that we can really cope up about the details and understood it properly. The next listening strategy is to promote guided listening and scaffold note-taking. Number 1 in this strategy is graphic organizers. So, give students a blank graphic organizer which summarizes the information in the text under headings. So, students will listen and fill in keywords that they hear in the correct places. And the second one is who's who. If the students are going to listen to a dialogue with several characters, and of course, if identifying the characters is not going to be one of the tasks in the listening, give them an overview of who's who in the listening. A dialogue with several speakers can be difficult sometimes, so the following task can help them have a higher rate of success. The third one is dictogloss. The teacher first prepares a text that contains examples of the grammatical form to be studied. So as the teacher reads the text at normal speed, students will take notes and continue the task after listening. So it is some sort of jotting down notes. Now next one is look for the meaning. So here is the teacher will provide a list of words to the students before listening to a certain story or whatsoever, and have them read it and instruct them as you play the audio track. So they also have to write the words that have the same meaning. So it is somewhat like a synonym activities. So the last one is editing task. So students discern discrepancies between what they hear and the printed text. So the last listening strategy under the while listening is give students thinking space. So here is to listen and describe as the teacher tells a story. He or she can stop regularly and then ask students to give or write descriptions, just like what I said earlier. The next is what's next. The teacher plays the audio track and then stops it in the middle. He or she then asks students to predict which word comes next, then continues with the audio track and repeats the process several times, allowing students to have time to respond.
At this juncture, we will be discussing the strategies and examples in teaching listening in the post-listening stage. So as you can recall earlier, we discussed these strategies in teaching post-listening. So this time we will provide examples to those strategies. So the first strategy is responding to the text. The first example is true or false. So the teacher can prepare a series of statements and the students will determine whether those statements are true or false. And if the students can answer the questions about the text correctly, those true or false questions, then it means that they really listened and understood the text. Another example is checking and summarizing. So it is an indication that the students have understood the text that they listened to if they can summarize its content. It could be orally or written, but if they summarized it correctly and really well, then they really understood the text. Another example is discussion. The teacher can ask the students to have a short discussion of the topic taken to the listening task, from the listening task. And the students can also give comments about the topic. Another example again is to test your classmates. So the students may be asked to provide questions for the listening task, such as multiple choice questions, short answer questions, and the likes. And these questions can be given to other students, their classmates, for them to answer. And another example again is open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are questions not answerable by yes or no because it requires in-depth critical thinking or comprehension. And by providing open-ended questions, the students can answer them and elaborate their ideas more. For example, if they listen to a text about a novel, then the teacher may provide the question, what makes the novel relevant in today's society? Something like that. And another activity again is what do you recall? So in this activity, the students will be put into pairs. And in this pair, the students will take turns. They will alternate in providing relevant information from the text that they have listened to. And the challenge is they cannot repeat the information given earlier already. So it is a challenge, and it also tests their comprehension and retention skills, as well as, and most importantly, their listening skills. And another example again is reflective and self-assessment activities. So the students can reflect on what they did and what they did not understand in the listening text, and the teacher can focus on what the students did not understand, and the teacher can help them understand what the students was not able to, were not able to. And this process can also be reused in other listening tasks. So if such instances occur again that the students will struggle to understand, then the teacher can help them. Lastly is interpretative task. Interpretative tasks are provided at the end of a unit of a discourse, and the students will respond to questions, and by responding to these questions, the students must provide evidence of their inferential thinking skills. So they will analyze. And in addition, the students can also be encouraged by the teachers to keep record of the strategies that they used in understanding the listening text, so they can apply it outside the classroom. So they can just be used inside the classroom, but also outside. For the strategy of analyzing linguistic features of the text, the students will not just analyze the content of the listening task, that what they listen to, but also the linguistic features of that text. And for that strategies, the examples of activities is first, disappearing dialogues. So in this activity, the students can promote critical thinking skills or develop their critical thinking skills, because the dialogues from the name itself, as the name suggests, disappearing dialogues, some part of the dialogues are erased. So they are just blank, and then the students will be asked to fill in those blanks with the phrases that they remember or phrases that are similar to them. And if the students can successfully do that, then it can really be said that they understood the text that they listened to. Another example is synonyms and antonyms. So in the listening text, the students can identify certain vocabularies, and find their synonyms and antonyms, which are also inside the text. This will also improve their vocabulary. So for example, if there is a certain word like melancholy, then the students will be asked to provide the synonyms and the antonyms of that word inside the text. Another example is listening script as a springboard. So although the skill here is listening, it is somewhat difficult to analyze the linguistic features of a listening text just by purely listening, because sometimes grammar or linguistic features is focused on its form. Its form. So providing the listening text as a script, a text, is beneficial, and the students can take some words or phrases in that and then analyze the word functions and expression. For example, there are idioms. Then the students will analyze them, those idioms from the text that they listen to, and also word functions, like for example, tenses of verb, something of the sort. And another example here is dictogloss. So after the while or the during listening activity, the students can prepare a summary of their own work, and of course, in preparing the summary, they must use correct grammatical functions and apply grammatical rules. Another example is sequencing events. So, after listening to a certain passage, the teacher may provide an activity to the students for them to sequence events. So the events will probably be disarranged or they will not be in order, and then the students will be asked by the teacher to arrange them according to the sequence of how they occurred in the passage they have listened to. Another activity is reviewing the transcript. So, after listening, the teacher can ask the students to identify what they did and what they did not understand, and then write those phrases or sentences that they did not understand so the teacher can elaborate on them. So this activity helps the students to further understand what they did not understand with the assistance of the teacher. So this will facilitate their comprehension. Last activity in this strategy is multiple choice tests. So multiple choice tests are not just used in the pre-listening stage or the before listening, and also the while or during listening, but also in the post-listening text. So as the students listen to the passages or the text and demonstrate their understanding of it, they can answer multiple choice questions and choose the correct answer out of those choices. And if they can choose the correct answer, they can find the right answer, then they have truly understood what they have listened to. Deconstructing a listening passage. So by deconstructing, it means that the students will or may break the passage that they have listened to into parts and then interpret them. Students may interpret the passages that they have listened to. And another activity is writing a short composition. So, after listening to the passage, the students may write a short composition about that passage, and that will assess if they really listened and understood the text that they have listened to. Third one is time to act. So as the name suggests, the students will act out or role play what they have listened to. But not all. They may just identify certain scenes or chosen scenes from the passage that they have listened to, and then create a skit or and then perform that. So this shows understanding and comprehension of the passage that the students listen to. Last activity for integrating productive skills is retelling. So in summer reading camps, if you're familiar with summer reading camps or if you have attended one, there is an event or a contest of retelling. So it goes like this. They read a book for a certain duration of time, and then after that the book will be taken away from them, and they will just by themselves they will retell the story. So this can also be used in post listening. After listening to a certain passage, the students will or may retell the story in their own words, and by retelling that, the main idea must be there, as well as the supporting details and the key or important phrases in the listening passage. So aside from that, teachers can also provide other activities which integrate the use of the productive skills, which is speaking and writing. So an example of this, aside from those mentioned, is writing a reaction paper, a reflection paper, or a literary analysis or criticism.
Alright, so we have here the free listening texts and exercises website. So we have 6. So we have Talk English, ELO, IELTS, ESL Launch, Breaking News English, and the TED Ed. What do you call TED Ed? Okay, first, so we have the Talk English. So in Talk English, you can access free listening lessons from different levels. So you can try this website. You can try this website in the link attached in our PPT. So number 2 is the ELO. So ELO offers over 3,000 free listening activities. So teachers and the students can access lessons even if you are a beginner, an intermediate, or a advanced learner. So number 3, we have iLet's Buddy. Okay, so for more listening tasks created by native speakers of English, you can also access the free materials across different levels. Number 4, we have ESL Launch. So in ESL Launch, you can also try this website which offers a different kinds of comprehension exercises for each listening tasks. And then we also have the Breaking News English. So Breaking News English, this website allows you to listen to interesting news contents. So this news is presented in different levels and can be read at a different speeds. So you can access this on the website. You can access rather this website in the link attached in our PPT. And last but not the least is the TED-Ed. When we say TED-Ed, you can look for relevant content to use as viewing and listening texts. So each lesson has pre and post listening activities. These parts which think and discuss. So that's the TED-Ed and the TED-Ed. So other than this provided here, there are still a lot of free websites online and applications that you can find online. So aside from this 6, you can also create your own content for the listening tasks. You can also record yourself reading poems or even reading stories, then upload in your Google Classroom. And this is not just only limited on the aforementioned websites, but you can also do it in your own. You are going to record your poems or by just reading a stories and upload it in different platforms. So for example, in Google Classroom or a group messenger, so that your students can also listen it anytime and anywhere. So there are just many platforms to enhance the listening skills of your students. So I guess that's the end of our report, and I hope that you guys learned something today, and thank you so much for listening.